This is Pod Strangely Warmed, a place where we tell the good Methodist story, where we have conversations that invite followers of Jesus to seek after that loving, just, and free world that God imagines for us all, and have a little fun along the way. Hello and welcome to Pod Strangely Warmed. I'm Daniel Hawkins, your host, and in this new series on the podcast, we are going to be preparing ourselves and you as the annual conference for the upcoming General Conference. Now, I know you may be like me, somebody who's been wondering, are we having General Conference? We were supposed to have one in 2020 and then again in 22, and it is now happening in 2024. But to be clear, it is the General Conference of 2020 happening in 24. To help us know more about these things are people who know more than me. Thanks be to God. I am thankful and incredibly thankful to have with us the clergy head of the delegation for the North Texas Conference, Dr. Clayton Oliphint, and the lay head of the Central Texas Conference delegation, Kim Simpson. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
I know our Pod Strangely Warm family will be blessed by this conversation that we're going to have, right? To kind of understand a little bit more about what General Conference is, what's on the table, what are some reasonable expectations, and all of that in the next 30 minutes or so.
Oh, yeah.
We got this?
Yeah.
Okay,
sure.
okay. As we get started, right? Kim, you are the chair of the Commission on General Conference. Now, for those of you who aren't crazy Methodist nerds, that's a huge deal. And Kim has been working incredibly hard for the last, 8 years?
12.
12. Goodness gracious. Okay. We should pray for you more than we do.
I haven't been chair for 12 years, but I have been on the commission for 12 years.
Okay. Then there is no one around that is better equipped to help us understand what is General Conference and what is its function and role within the United Methodist Church.
Well, General Conference is the meeting of delegates from all over the world, and it takes place supposedly once every 4 years, and it's the only place that we can change the rules of the United Methodist Church, which is the discipline. That's where all our rules are kept in the book called the discipline. And so that's what that is. General Conference meets and they deliberate in what's called the legislative committees. All the delegates go into different kinds of committees to deal with different changes in the form of petitions that come in, and they consider those petitions the first week of General Conference. The second week of General Conference, the petitions that they feel need to come forward, be moved forward for changes or brand new rules in our church, they bring them forward the second week, and together all of the delegates vote on whether they want this to happen or not to happen. And this year there are 862 delegates from the United States and the rest of the world together.
So if we flash back to like 7th grade U.S. civics for a second, right? General Conference, if we think about the way the U.S. government is structured, right? We have the legislature, we have the judicial branch, and we have the executive branch, right? General Conference is the legislative branch within the church.
Right.
Congress.
It's Congress.
Yeah. Yes.
For better or for worse.
For better or for worse. There are many things that could be said here that will be left in our heads. But, Kim, just as we get started, right, we know its function now, right? Mm-hmm. We've been preparing for this day for a while. I brought with me, and it's in the other room, I am the lowest elected clergy person left in Central Texas on our delegation, and so I didn't get the cool bound version of the Advanced Daily Christian Advocate, which is where all the petitions get delivered to us in. And so my poor admin at Cleburne had to print it out and stick it in a binder for me, and that binder's like this thick.
There are actually 3 volumes.
Yes, there are 3 volumes. For those of us who are getting ready for General Conference, it's the last week of April and the first week of May?
April 22nd through May the 4th.
Okay. So we invite...
Well, actually, the delegates arrive the 22nd, and we start conference on the 23rd of April.
Okay. So if we've got good praying folks listening to the podcast, we invite them to be in prayer in that time.
They can start now,
Okay.
praying for the delegates now, because the delegates are all preparing, and it would be nice to have those prayers now.
We'll be in Charlotte, North Carolina this time. Okay. Clayton, as you think about General Conference, you've been a number of times. This is not your first rodeo. For somebody who hasn't been to General Conference before, what is the experience like? I mean, we've made some jokes around the edges, but it's an incredibly important meeting that does a lot of powerful work. But what is that experience like as somebody?
Well, I mean, to me, you see the church at its best, and you see the church perhaps at its worst. And just to be honest, the way that it's gone the last few decades. But I went to my first general conference as a first reserve delegate in 2004, and the opening worship was like everything. It's the most glorious worship service
Oh my gosh.
that I've ever experienced in my life, and I thought this is what heaven should be like. This is what the church can be. Voices from all over the world coming together in common praise of God. This is beautiful. And then 5 minutes later, we're debating the rules, and it's just like the most rancorous debate that's ours. So it can be very intimidating your first time to go. As a delegate, as an observer, it's confusing at times. You have amendments to the amendment to the amendment, and if you're not familiar with Robert's Rules of Order, it can get very even if you are
exasperating.
It very is exasperating. So but it is the church. Body from around the world, representatives from all over the world, and when you are sitting on that floor in the plenary, you recognize you are one vote among 862, and the other thing I always think is that you bring your perspective, which is about this big. That this is what I learned my first general conference is, everyone comes to general conference with their lens through which they're seeing general conference. And one of the things I think is so important to do is to frame that back a little bit and to see a larger lens and be able to see that other voices have something to teach and to learn from. And that's been one of the greatest gifts for me of general conferences, just realizing people from all over the world, the voices they bring, the issues they bring to the table, and how important that is.
What a powerful thing it is to be a part of a worldwide church.
It is,
and
truly
often
is.
we just see it through the lens of our local church each time, and
Right.
and the worldwide nature is a little more theoretical, right? We are, and we believe that, and we're committed to that. But being able to worship together in the same room with so many people from so many different places and spaces, and the Spirit in the room, it's kind of like worship at annual conference with a multiple attached.
It is.
Okay.
It
Okay.
is because
I'm excited.
The delegates will be wearing headphones for translation.
7 languages.
Seven languages,
Translate
and
into
it's
7 languages.
it's like this is again, it's a glimpse of heaven.
Yeah.
All these languages gathered together in common praise of God.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So many of the things that we hear out of General Conference are often the flip side, right? If you said sometimes it's the story of the church at its best and maybe in its deepest struggle, right? What makes headlines is the deepest struggle.
Right.
What makes headlines is the stuff that looks ugly, or because that sells papers, it gets clicks, it forwards agendas, right? But there is both beauty and struggle in any gathering that big of humans with deep care and deep opinion. Kim, one of the things that folks have been asking of me and of those of us who've been on the delegation, because we were elected in 2019, I assume the same for North Texas.
Yes.
We've been serving for more than a quadrennium,
Yes.
and so far have been able to go to a jurisdictional conference, right?
Yeah.
But one of the questions that has come up has been to say, and we may have gotten a window into it in Clayton's answer just a second ago, but we haven't had this meeting for 4 years like we're supposed to, like the discipline says, and acts as though the world will come to an end if we don't have it, right? And we're kind of continuing on. Is it important that we still have it? Does it still matter?
It does matter.
Okay.
And it matters a lot because there are certain decisions that can't be made except at General Conference.
Okay.
Judicial Council, which is like our judicial branch,
Right.
the people that serve on that can only be elected at General Conference. So they have been serving a long time. People that are on the commission can only be elected at General Conference. So they have been serving a long time. I've helped plan more General Conferences than anyone else because I've been on the commission so long. So we can't pass a budget. We can't change anything about apportionments or connectional giving, as we call it, until we go to General Conference. So even though we may need to bring those apportionments down percentage-wise, we can't do that until we go to General Conference and pass a new budget. So we've just sort of been in a stay situation until we can get there and make some changes. We can't change the number of bishops, even though maybe we don't need those many bishops anymore until we get to General Conference, because that's where all those big decisions are made. So we've been coasting or just at a standstill until there are things we need to do to change to get our church forward for the future.
Yeah.
We are operating a 50s model in 2024, and that is not good. So we need to be now meet and not just meet to do things as usual, but to frame the church for the future, to make the changes we need so we can be the church God's calling us to be, not just stay where we have been.
That's so important, what Kim just said, because, for the rank and file in our pews, and for most of us as pastors, the Sunday after General Conference is going to look very much the same in terms of, we're going to gather for worship, we're going to study the Bible, we're going to reach out to our neighborhood to try to help people in need, we're going to do the things that we do as a church. Those things don't change, but the big picture things that we do at General Conference can be vitally important in a number of areas that does ultimately affect the life of your local church.
In so many ways, it's critical.
Yes.
In order for, even though we may not see locally every impact, the things we want to do locally are in many ways impacted substantially by General Conference being able to do their work.
Yep.
Kim, you talk about structuring for a new day, structuring for a new future, visioning forward, right? Not using the 1950s model for church in 2024. I think there are some proposals. We talked about legislation, and we'll do our best not to get too far in the weeds here, but to give a high-level approach here. Some things that would be substantial structural changes that might help us move into the new future. One of the buzzwords that has been making it around the very niche corners of Methodist interwebs, right, has been regionalization.
Yes.
Can you begin? Can the two of y'all begin and kind of give us just the 30-second summary, and then maybe a little deeper beyond that of what is regionalization, what does it involve, and what impact might it have for our local churches that Sunday after General Conference?
Regionalization is not a new idea.
No.
It's been proposed for many, many, many decades. My father brought a proposal to General Conference in 1988 for what we would think of as regionalization, and so it's been around a long time, but we've never been able to pass it. We actually passed it in 2008.
And then it didn't get ratified by the annual conferences.
So, but the idea is that we're not a U.S.-based church, but we operate like a U.S.-based church.
Okay.
And so this idea, really, regionalization legislation coming before General Conference comes from the central conferences, and it comes
Which are those outside the U.S.
Yes, and it comes with the idea that we need to not be a colonial model of doing ministry, and that we need greater parity across the world. And so if we have the U.S. as a region, and Africa as a region, and the Philippines as a region, and Europe as a region, that it brings greater parity to the whole, and that what can be discussed at General Conference are those issues that affect the whole church, the whole global church. And
worldwide church.
Worldwide church. That's a better word now. Than just a specific region of the church.
And that people may not know that those outside the U.S., the central conferences, can adapt parts of the book of discipline for their culture so that it makes it more relevant to them. The U.S. cannot do that because the book of discipline is the only place that we have to go, and it can't be altered because we have no place except General Conference to alter that. So if we want to make changes, the regionalization will help U.S. to be able to deal with U.S. things, and we wouldn't have to do it on the worldwide spectrum. We could do it in our own region.
It leads to greater contextual ministry, so that and there's such differences between our context of ministry that we need to have that kind of freedom to do ministry within the context in which we serve.
Well, and just to back out for those of our folks listening to this or watching this who may not have sat through the live stream from General Conference or may not have been there before. The Books of Discipline, we've got a couple of old copies, 08 and 12, sitting over here. My understanding is that everything that goes in there gets debated, or not any change to what's in there gets debated and wrestled with at General Conference. And that includes things that are often very U.S.-centric, right? Like things that affect pension for you and for me are dealt with at a gathering that has flown people in from around the world and made them sit through, right, hours of debate on a Westpath bill that is not going to be impactful for our folks from the Philippines or our folks from Africa or our folks from Western Europe or anything like that, right?
I sat with some delegates from Africa last time, one from North Katanga and one from one of the Zimbabwe conferences, and they were expressing their frustration. We didn't fly all this way to debate your pension program,
right?
Which doesn't affect us.
Right.
We want to talk about mission and ministry, and the the things we do as a worldwide church, not your U.S. issues.
Right.
Great frustration in that.
I think there's both responsibility and equity issues here, right? We have a responsibility to the time that these delegates have given, right? But then there's also some equity issues, right? Because every vote at General Conference is a global vote, even if the impact is just a U.S.-centric impact, right? And so they have to sit through it, and they got to vote on it, right? I've heard the metaphor used that there are moments where we are spiders trapped in our own web.
Yes. That's a great description.
And so regionalization would give us a chance to restructure in a way that gets us a little more, we're the spider who gets a little more free from parts of its own web that are causing harm and causing trouble, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. And maybe does that push us to, like, General Conference becomes the place where we find unity in the essentials, right? Like what is worldwide in its nature, what affects everybody, and then the regional.
And I look at that as that, like if you've ever attended a World Methodist Conference, we focus on our Wesleyan heritage, and we worship and we celebrate mission and ministry that's done in common. And it's a much happier gathering, a much more productive gathering in that sense. And not that you wouldn't still have debates on a number of issues with the General Conference, but a lot of those the things that have taken so much time at General Conference could be moved to regions, and discussed in regional conferences, and the General Conference can really be what I think it's intended to be.
Only things that would affect worldwide connection. Yeah. Just makes sense.
It does. And I think, just in a metaphor for that, when we think of some maybe local church partnerships that your church might have, right? Often we end up partnered with the Presbyterians and the Lutherans and the Baptists and the non-denominational church. Now, if there's this particular need that arises within our community and we want to have a ministry of mercy or compassion toward that, right? When we go to plan the food distribution, or we go to plan how do we support the school system on a collaborative basis that way, right? We don't go in and go, Presbyterians, you're wrong on this, and Baptists, you're wrong. I mean, we go in seeking that commonality.
There's a family
right?
down the street that needs food, and we can partner together and do something about that.
I think of my time in the rural churches. We had a couple of people have house fires that were devastating, and the entire community came together in common purpose with common ministry. And we're very different, right? Church people, Baptists, Methodists, Pentecostals, whoever, and people who didn't want anything to do with church but came together in that common purpose and in that common ministry, and that created space. And so when I hear y'all talk about regionalization and apply it kind of on a more micro local level, right? Metaphorically, it's kind of like where we say we are choosing purpose together. We're seeing what's in common rather than what is different. Okay. Talk to me a little bit. This sounds substantially structurally different than what you described the function of General Conference before. And so is regionalization something that passes with a few quick votes at General Conference, then immediately becomes church law, and the Sunday after, all of a sudden we're a part of a region and we didn't know,
No.
what's the after effect and what's the timeline after that, and what would also be required for this to become?
Well, it has to pass by 2/3 vote at General Conference first. And then if it does pass by 2/3 vote, then it goes back to each annual conference all over the world, and they have to ratify it. So that would take
a constitutional amendment.
Right.
Okay.
So constitutional amendments require 2/3 vote of General Conference and then 2/3 vote of the aggregate.
2/3 majority vote for yes of every annual conference.
Yeah.
So-
and so that would be worldwide, and that takes, because conferences don't meet at the same time all around the world, so that would take
Several
at least
years,
a year to 18 months to get it ratified.
Okay.
So once it gets passed, if it's passed at General Conference, that doesn't mean it's going to happen for another at least a year to 18 months.
And it makes those voices at annual conference matter too, right?
Yes.
Our lay members to annual conference and our
Absolutely.
clergy members to annual
Yeah.
conference
Absolutely.
voting on that as well.
And they need to understand what they're voting on. The real truth, not what they've heard from somebody else or what they've seen in the paper, but listen to the delegates who've been to General Conference who understand what they really voted on.
A structure for a new day,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
To maybe coming into 2000 or maybe 2020, right? Not 1950, as you invited us to earlier. In next week's podcast with Tim and Kelly, we will unpack a little bit more about regionalization. Kelly is one of the leading experts on kind of what are some of the nitty-gritty things on this regionalization, and Tim is deeply connected, at least in Central Texas here, to kind of the impact of disaffiliation and things. So we're not going to spend as much time on those two things today, but I do want to talk about something that I think is connected to what we have been talking about, and maybe the reason for some of the disaffiliation process to begin with, right? For 30 years at General Conference, maybe more, we've been wrangling with how do we understand human sexuality.
50.
50.
Since 72.
Since 72, okay. As a new participant, right, in the General Conference this time, it feels like while previous General Conferences, the build-up was all about what side are you going to be on and how are we going to win the fight, and I'm feeling less of that this time. But it's still, the discipline still says what it says, right? And, what are you guys hearing in terms of the proposals that are in place and what the energy of the movement of the church, or is it connected to regionalization, right? Coming to a understanding on LGBTQ inclusion, specifically related to ordination and marriage, right? We've been a church for 50 years that said all are welcome and all belong within the life and leadership of the local church. It's just an ordination and marriage question.
Well, first off, I want you to know regionalization and change in language are not related at all.
Okay.
Regionalization is about the structure of the church and how we're going to change that maybe. And language has to do with more social principles and how we deal with people and, with our process on ministerial credentials. But they are not linked together at all. People try to link them together. They are not linked at all. One is entirely stands alone from the other. We have been dealing with possible change for many years, and there are a lot of different petitions out there to change in all different ways, some having to do with the ministerial aspect of it, some having to do with just the social principles aspect of it. And social principles, we know, are not rules. They are guides on how we, as United Methodists, live. Now, when you get to what ordination process, now those are rules. So
Right.
that those are also distinct and separate. So that we're not looking at it all together. It's different pathways that these changes can come. You have some?
Yeah, I mean, I think the language that's in the Book of Discipline has caused harm to a lot of people. It's caused harm to the church, no matter if you're more conservative or more progressive around all of this. It's caused great harm. I mean, the disaffiliation that we've had has been largely because of this. People will say it's something else, but it's this. It's this language. It's this hurtful language, and how do we deal with this? And so, the idea is to remove that language. There's great, I think, among U.S. delegates, a great groundswell to just remove that language. And what that does is it doesn't force anyone to be anything they're not.
Right.
But it allows for greater participation. In my mind, as I look at this, if you're conservative or traditional on this, be conservative and traditional. If you're more progressive, be more progressive. But removing that language just there's just harm. I mean, I have a family member, and it's like, but your church hates me.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, we love you. We love everyone. But that language says something different to them.
Yeah.
And so removing that language, I think, allows us to really be honest when we say open hearts, open minds, open doors, that we really mean that.
Yeah.
And that there are no barriers to that. How that gets played out in local churches, is kind of becomes a local church decision.
Issue,
Which we talked about the one church plan back in 2019.
Right.
And removing the language in my mind puts us at that one church plan in that sense.
To me, it would become a choice for every church, be a policy or whatever choice. And when Clayton talks about this, and he talks about the U.S. delegates are probably, most that I know are in favor of this.
Most.
Then you go outside the U.S. to central conferences, and they, with their cultures, are totally different in looking at this. And so that's where regionalization would be a big help to come in, when we could make some changes for our culture, because they're looking at it with cultural eyes different than we are too.
Yeah.
But it's not an easy thing for anyone, because we have for so many years used this. But I don't think I'm with Clayton. It's so harmful and hurtful to people, to persons, and everyone. It says is of sacred worth.
Yeah.
And so we need to act like we really are of sacred worth to everyone.
Well, your vision from the very beginning, lifting up the best of who we are as United Methodists, right? A community gathered across languages to worship and praise God, and it's not just across languages, across cultures, across communities. I think of my local church and its expression, right? We are blessed by the presence and leadership of gay folks and straight folks, Tongan folks and Caucasian folks, African-American folks, people who speak Tongan primarily, people who speak English primarily, people who vote Republican and vote Democrat, and people who defy any label that you want to put on them except Christian, maybe. And that's a maybe sometimes, right? And how beautiful when we're living in that kind of space, our witness has a chance to be. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, you can think back in the 50s that there were people sitting down the pew from each other, and some of them were for Dewey and some were for Truman, and they figured out that they could sit together in church because their love for Christ was more important than whatever differences they had politically or any other way. And so for me, this offers the opportunity for the church to really be the church, a community where people can come as you are.
Right.
And we all need God's grace. We all fall short. We're all looking for mercy. We all need to find that home, and to have a place where you can come together. And you and I might disagree about a number of things. We might see the world differently, but we see in Jesus the love that draws us together. That's the church that to me, I want to be a part of.
Amen.
And that's what I hope will come through a general conference. I pray every day that the Holy Spirit shows up and moves in a mighty way so that we may be in unity and that the world can see us in unity in service to God and not at odds with each other and unable to get past differences. We're all going to have differences. Clayton said we all do.
And I think the church has kind of fallen into where the world is in terms of the divisiveness in the world. And you know, what a witness in a world right now to be a part of a church that's building bridges instead of trying to divide people. Let's build bridges and bring people together. I mean, that's...
Seems like Paul said something about not being conformed to the patterns of the world, but instead being transformed by the renewing of our mind and our spirit. Yeah. What a beautiful image and what a beautiful invitation. Thank you both for being here, for helping us begin to get ready for General Conference. And part of why we wanted to have everybody here is because you are known, you are trusted within the bounds of this annual conference, and in a world where, just as in our political news, our church political news can come from a variety of sources, some of which who remain hidden behind veils that we'll never see, know, or get to shake hands with. Helping our folks within both annual conferences begin to hear from people they know and they trust about what is coming and what may happen, or at least what is being considered as we go forward. I'm thankful for both of your time and for your witness to what we might become, that church for a new day and a new generation. On behalf of our Pod Strangely Warm family, I want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Before I let you go, I want to be selfish just for Daniel here for just a second. I am a newbie to General Conference. It is 2 straight weeks that sound really kind of scary and intimidating in terms of it sounds like a lot. So for each of you, Clayton, you said you've been doing it since 2004. Kim, how many?
2008.
2008. Okay. What is a single General Conference essential for the newbie to make sure is in my suitcase?
You can't put sleep in the suitcase. That's what you need.
You need sleep.
Calm. You need your ADCA.
Can I bring the PDF instead of the big binder?
Can.
Okay.
Yes, you can do that. But otherwise, you will be lost. You won't know what's happening. You really need that.
Okay. Troy Aikman said that Roger Staubach told him something that helped him when he was quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. He said, never get too high and never get too low. And that's my advice about General Conference is you got to remain
even keel,
less anxious, and not let your emotions and your spirit just be dictated by what's happening. Remain calm, stay grounded, and I'm using the season of Lent to prepare spiritually, emotionally, and physically for General Conference. That's my mantra, because you got to be prepared in that way.
Yeah, and what I try to remember is we think we're in control, but we're really not. And it's God. And if we allow God to work through us, then we will do His will. So that's how I'm trying to remain calm as we prepare for this. And the positions I've had, that it's not about me, it's about God.
Amen. Thank you. And thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us today on Pod Strangely Warm. Until next time, I'm Daniel Hawkins. This has been Pod Strangely Warm. If you enjoyed our conversation today, know that you can find us anywhere you find podcasts. On Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, any and all the places, we are there. So if you want to continue the good United Methodist conversation that you've been a part of today, find us, like us, rate us, review us, and share with a friend so that the good news that is happening right here in our own midst can amplify even